Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It's Monday, January 20th, MLK Day. Last week, we discussed Noah Wyle in The Pit. This week, we're discussing The Pits, a sitcom that came out 20-odd years ago, lasted less than 2 months on Fox, and starred a young Lizzie Kaplan and David Henry. Now, you've watched a few episodes of this show, right?
Yeah.
There's one where a Volkswagen falls in love with the daughter, Lizzie Kaplan, and tries to steal her away and marry her in Vegas. Her family has to come rescue her.
Seeing David Henry at the age of 10
Yeah.
is just really funny because I thought he got a start in Wizards of Waverly Place.
I think he was one of the... They came out with like an animated The Pits a few years later, and I don't know if he returned, but I think Lizzie Kaplan did.
Was that supposed to be like the finale to the series? Because it got canceled like after the first season, I think.
I think there were like 2 unaired episodes in the first season, but I could be wrong about that. The other episode you saw, or one of the other episodes you saw, was where the parents turn into werewolves. And by the end of the episode, they don't even solve that, right? Like, They're still werewolves. Okay, so 2 truths, 1 lie. Of the remaining episodes, which you have not seen, I chose 2 that are real, and then I added 1 for myself, all right? And I want to see if you can identify, based off the crazy scenarios that were happening in this 2004 show, 2003, 2004 show, which is real. So Bob's New Heart. Bob and Liz are convinced to join a dance club, which turns out to be a satanic cult. Okay?
Okay.
The other one is A Taxing Slumber. Father of the family, Bob, falls asleep while doing his taxes, only to wake up 3 years later with his wife remarried and his daughter on her way to college. And then the last one is Miss American Pipe. After a basement explosion leaves Faith, the daughter's head, with a pipe right through the middle, it raises concerns whether or not she'll be allowed to star in a rock video. Out of those 3, Taxing Slumber, Miss American Pipe, and Bob's New Heart, which one is the one that's allowed?
I'm going to go with the middle one, the Rip Van Winkle one.
A Taxing Slumber?
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, that did not happen. I thought it'd be an interesting scenario. I realized that the daughter's like 16, so 3 years later she would have been 19. Maybe she took a gap year, but who cares? Good catch. So let's shift gears and talk about Mike Scully and Julie Thatcher's next show, Complete Savages. This gem came out in 2004 on ABC, so only a year later, lasted 1 season, starred Mel Gibson as a single father of 5 boys. It's based off his real life, where I think he has like 6 boys or kids. You want to hear what one of the episode's descriptions is? Free Lily. One of the kids is distressed when he learns he must dissect a class frog. He refuses, and everyone makes fun of him. He gives in to peer pressure and cuts the frog. Later that night, in a dream, the frog visits Chris's room and tells him to save the new class frog, Lily. So, what would you think, based on what you know of the first show, The Pits, and now hearing about Savages, Mike Scully and Julie Thatcher, they work together, how they write? Like, they clearly like sitcoms. They like family-style elements.
They also like fantastical
outlandish,
elements. Yeah.
Crazy plots, right? And so we skip forward into the 2020s, and they invent Duncanville. Now, I never saw Duncanville, but that ran for like 3 seasons and also had a family dynamic. It was an animated series.
I was going to say, I think I remember the promos for it, yeah.
Right. But it's the same idea. And so finally we can get to the show, the actual show for today, which is
Shifting
Gears, which is about a widower who runs an auto shop and reluctantly takes in his estranged daughter and her 2 children.
Yep.
And they're played by Tim Allen, being the grandfather. And
Riley is played by Kat Dennings.
Yep, Kat Dennings from Two Broke Girls.
The kids' names, I just got their names, are Carter and Georgia.
Okay. And so you've seen, I guess, more of Carter, because I saw the second half of the second episode. You've seen both.
Right.
And we've seen more of him than I would think Georgia.
Yeah, so far, because he's the one that's bonding, I think, most with Matt.
Mm-hmm. It feels like we're kind of in the 90s all over again. We've talked about this a little bit, but Kelsey Grammer just actually got his show canceled. But
Frasier, yeah.
George Lopez in Lopez v. Lopez. Tim Allen now. Dennis Leary last week when we were talking about Going Dutch.
All those I had on actually my similarities list. You also had Roseanne because you have the...
Well, no. I'm saying because all of those are shows where single dads are trying to restore relationships with their kids and grandkids after being absent or failing them somehow in the past. Now, you can include other, like Roseanne stuff, but that originally was not, like the Connors is what it turned into, right? Yeah. It wasn't about a single dad.
Well, no,
this is taking like a direct formula they're like stealing from themselves and creating the same show. And that's why I find it funny that the first episode is called Restoration.
Well, they're not only doing that, they're also taking just a lot. It seems like a lot of Netflix sitcoms that also have a laugh track because you have The Crew. The main cast was head of a NASCAR garage that Kevin James was a head
Right.
of. Upshaw's Mike Epps plays the character of the head of a car repair company called Benny's Garage. Tires was a Shane Gillis Netflix series that only came out a couple months ago, where he manages a family struggling auto repair chain. And
If
then
if you were a car guy, you're cool, right? So they want to add that element. I'm surprised that like what's his face, Jay Leno hasn't had his own sitcom where because he has his whole garage already set up for it.
Well, it's also like I was surprised to learn that Tim Allen, Last Man Standing, ran for 9 seasons.
Well, it got canceled.
I know, and then
it got
Fox picked it up.
Yes, and so it actually ran longer than Home Improvement. Yes,
I think
no?
so. Yeah,
Okay.
almost 200 episodes.
You mentioned the laugh track in this show, though, in Shifting Gears.
Yeah.
And I will tell you the top IMDb, the top 2 reviews right now say, get rid of the laugh track and too much canned laughter. The funny thing is, it's a live audience.
So
what does that even mean?
I could tell.
Stop doing it in front of a live audience?
I could tell that it was a live audience just from the way that they were laughing. It's definitely a negative. I always do not like laugh tracks.
Well, would you want to see the show live, though? Would you want to see any show live? Because I don't think you have before. I know they did it with Big Bang Theory.
Definitely. I think you even said the Upshaw's first few episodes were in front of a live studio audience. I would like to see it, but again, it's just the laugh track I feel like it's outdated at this point. It's archaic.
There's nostalgia involved. And with Tim Allen and Kat Dennings coming from the sitcom verse, like you would think that they'd try to keep up with it. If there was none, then like it's only a 20-some minute pilot and second episode. Would not the jokes, they need to add more of them, you would think? Because the actors pause for the jokes
it would
to
need
hit.
to be it would need to be a different style.
It's kind of like during COVID when you'd watch a John Oliver episode and he could no longer pause for audience breaks, and so like it would be him in the white wall and there would just be this awkward like moment where
for
he
the
would just
first
have
few
to
episodes
jump it. Yeah, because it takes a while for an actor to get that setting in place. How do you feel that Kat Dennings and Tim Allen's chemistry together is?
I actually thought that worked really well for the show. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to.
Talk to me about the first episode's plot.
Well, as you said, Matt Parker, he's a grumpy classic car restorer. He's obviously
grumpy classic car. Oh, you mean like
he's a traditional man.
You just made it sound like he was like everybody knows one.
I had never
You're
seen.
saying it's classic cars as in those made in the 1950s and 60s.
Yes, and I think that like he's playing the same exact character that he probably played in Last Man Standing.
Sure, Tim Allen plays Tim Allen
because he's literally just a conservative man talking about how quitters are like that's what this new generation is and how people have to get over themselves.
It is crazy to me that like now where the Republican Party or the Conservative Party clearly is doing like very kind of ambitiously crazy things sometimes, and that's never the joke that's played. It's very inoffensive, and so whenever the liberal character is making fun of the conservative character, it's usually about like boomer humor type things. You're old, like things have changed over time, but it's less about like, well, you have Elon Musk preaching that everybody needs to get one of those crazy cyber trucks and drive those around. Like that's the party that the conservatives are right now aligned with. And it would be kind of weird if you have an old, staunch conservative like Tim Allen having to defend an Elon Musk or even just what Trump is saying half the time. And I feel like that doesn't get as much play because
like
it's
you're
just
saying,
based on like 90s stuff.
Yeah, it's just kind of it's down the road because even though they have the differences, Riley and Matt, by the end of the episode, they have their fences mended once they start thinking about their mom, who apparently was kind of the middleman in the whole relationship.
Yeah.
But just going a little bit off that, the references for the show are really old. We have Tim Allen learning about podcasts. They're still making fun of fidget spinners. Fidget spinners, I feel like, had their day back in maybe at most late 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are 10 years later getting them. We even had Sponge Daddies, although I kind of like that reference because I knew they mentioned Shark Tank and how that became famous because of them. So I kind of enjoyed that. So it just, they kept
Are those little smiley face, yellow?
The sponges with the little smiley face on them. And then the guy got like a massive deal from Shark Tank. I watched that like 10 years ago. And they mentioned that in the episode. So the references, they kept on falling in and out of like recency.
Yeah.
And that kind of annoyed me a little bit.
And was that just in the pilot or was it also in the second episode?
It was in the second episode as well.
So did you see a difference like drastically in the type of show that you were watching? Because they did switch showrunners.
They did?
Yeah.
After the pilot?
So in the first 2 episodes, you haven't really outlaid what happens in the second. But in the first one, it doesn't sound like they were doing too much out of left field.
What
Like
happened?
it wasn't the Pits and it wasn't Savages in the way that there wasn't crazy stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised that the two TV shows that you mentioned before, I didn't see really any element of them in this, because in the first episode, Matt allows Riley's son Carter to drive a car, which he crashes, and that's what kind of leads them into an argument over the whole thing.
Oh, was it a classic car? Was it like a really fancy car?
Yeah, it was a nice car.
Oh, okay.
And then Riley and Matt, that's when they kind of start fighting, and then finally fences are mended, and Matt is like, okay, yeah, you can live here with your two kids. So that's the basis of the show for the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
The second episode is when Riley, she's trying to set up Carter's school teacher, Caitlin, played by Brenda Song. I like seeing her there, Macaulay Culkin's wife.
Kat Dennings was, of course, in Two Broke Girls. She's also been in things like the Marvel movies and in Newsroom, I think, for a little arc. But she most recently, I think, was also in a show called Dollface, where Brenda
Song
was the co-star, like her second. And so they've worked together a lot.
And of course, I know Brenda Song from when she was really young in Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. That used to be my favorite show
as London Tipton.
As London Tipton,
yes.
Yeah.
So when is Ashley Tisdale joining the cast?
I would like to see that. I'd like to see a Sweet Life of Zack and Cody reprisal. But...
So this exists in the same universe. Okay.
But anyways, yeah. So Riley
that would be quite the fall for her though, because she's now just, as far as money wise, like she's now just a school teacher, but like back in the early 2000s, she was a millionaire who owned hotels, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Anyways, Riley, she's trying to set up Caitlin with Gabe, Sean William Scott, who's also in the show. It's funny because I feel like he's only done cameos as of late. That's all I can think of. But she's trying to set something up between them while Matt is trying
that's
to
her ex, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
But Matt is trying to help Carter kind of for a test with like flashcards. And it reminded me a lot of Mr. Incredible from Mr. Incredibles 2. When he was trying to help Dash with his school studies.
Right. So Carter has not a disability, but something where he's allowed to take a few extra minutes for his test so that he can gather his thoughts. And so, like, that's what's necessary for him to get good grades. And Tim Allen's like, you got to just suck it up and learn how to take a test in the time that's given. And so he's trying to, like, hardcore teach him, gives him a little cheat sheet note card, which the kid takes the wrong way.
He thinks it actually means cheat sheets during the
test. Something he can whip out during the test and finish his answers. That kid is 18 years old. He's playing like, what, 15, 16?
Around there, yeah.
Okay. And so, like, it's kind of strange when you see, like, a full-blown adult, like, playing a couple years earlier.
Well, it's even weirder when he has, like, a fidget spinner, and he's just, like, really, really enamored by that.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed Matt bonding with Riley's kids, again, mostly Carter, with, like, learning to drive or the math homework. I thought that was kind of where the show's bread and butter was, because it was actually, I enjoyed Tim Allen. I didn't think I was going to in the TV series.
Why not? What have you not enjoyed Tim Allen in before?
When I was really young, I saw Wild Hogs in theaters. I think that was the first thing I had seen him in, aside from Buzz Lightyear. Also, he was in El Camino Christmas, that Netflix movie. The Zoom movie that came out in like 2005, that kid's movie. So it's like a lot of...
Are you on his Wikipedia page right now? Because just to pull the... Okay, yeah. But there's a ton of stuff you have liked him in. Santa Claus, probably. Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah, when I was a kid, that stuff was like kind of my favorite.
In sitcom stuff, I feel like the only reason this thing ran for 9 seasons, his previous show, and also Home Improvement, the guy's a classic comedian when it comes to sitcoms. I also enjoyed, I think my favorite scenes, even though I didn't see, again, both episodes, was Kat Dennings and him both on the screen together. I felt like they did have chemistry, and that the back and forth, even if it is really simple jokes, like they were able to pull them off.
And that's the thing, the cast, they all work. So
okay, well, Sean William Scott, I wanted to ask him about. It feels sort of like a wasted talent for him because he's just off in the corner. He has his own plot line, but I wasn't that interested in it. Were you?
No, but I liked seeing him.
Well,
so.
what's going on with that? So he is like an ex-jock.
He's still in love. Yes, he's still in love with Riley, and because he's always been ever since high school. But then Riley, she's trying to set him up again with Caitlin, who's Carter's.
And then he sleeps
teacher.
with her, right?
That's implied at the very ending, yes.
So you think that he is still destined to end up with Kat Dennings?
That's what they're making it seem like, yeah.
Riley's character?
I mean, it's like a will they, won't they that I don't think has hit its stride yet. Like, I don't think they're at the point where it's really going to be that way, but that's where I see the story heading.
Well, do you think that the story or the show is going to be picked up for a long enough time that it's going to get there?
I think, I might be wrong, but didn't I see that this was like the top streaming show?
So you did see some stuff, but first let's get into your personal review of like episode 1, episode 2, or both of them together.
I think that both episodes are just as good as one another. I think that what you see is what you're going
Even
to
with
get.
the actual showrunner now, Michelle Nader, who wrote 22 episodes of Two Broke Girls, who also produced or had executively produced Dollface with Kat Dennings and Brenda Song. She seems like she's got a pretty strong grasp of sitcoms as well. You have John Paskin, who directed both episodes, so I guess that might be the common tie that you're seeing between them, because he's 80 years old, but he's still very much active in the business. He did 73 episodes of Last Man Standing, 39 episodes of Home Improvement, so he's very used to Tim Allen. I do find it that there is a balance between the Kat Dennings-ness of the show and the Tim Allen-ness of the show, and ultimately you say that paid off in what way?
I think that it was funny and it had just enough heart, which I didn't know if it was going to be able to pull off, because sometimes it can come across as really hokey if they try to do it. But I think in the series it actually worked. And it's for that reason that I think I'm going to give it a passing grade, a 6 out of 10. I mean, these are milquetoast characters, we have to realize. Kat Dennings, she's like, the single mom having to make ends meet. She's at the lowest point in her life, going through a messy divorce. I feel like we've seen that in a lot of in shows recently. But she even calls herself a cliche in the show. But I think that, like you said, the chemistry, the talent that they have on screen, and the fact that I genuinely was enjoying it, like laughing at some of the things that Matt was saying. He might be my favorite character because he is playing the old grandpa.
I'll say I'm a little disappointed, though, because I thought with Mike Scully and Julie Thatcher, at least in the pilot, since that's the one they wrote, that they would try something crazy, that they would shoot for the skies, like have a till death scenario where one of the characters was breaking the fourth wall the whole time. Now, it is funny, the till deaths of the world, the Pitts of the world, and Savage's terrible IMDb scores.
Yeah.
Like they were not popular shows. And so I guess I understand why they went back to the classics.
First off, it's called Shifting Gears, and you just have Tim Allen and Kat Dennings in a car in their poster. I don't know how they were really going to be able to do a lot of craziness that you're talking about.
But like, why change a scenario that works for Tim Allen, at least? Because I think Home Improvement has an 8.2 after all these years. I think, what was his other show? Last Man Standing?
Last Man Standing, yeah.
Also has like an 8 point something. So there is something to be said about just very bland jokes that people tend to laugh at every single time. Inoffensive things. The generational gap misunderstanding, I guess it's so relatable to a lot of people who watch ABC programs. On Metacritic, though, this has a 49. It's got a 42% critic score, a 67% audience score. I already said that people aren't big fans of the live studio, even though they call it just canned laughter.
So I align more with the audience, it sounds like.
Roger Ebert gave it the most praise, which is different for us. We haven't seen Roger Ebert jump aboard any show.
RogerEbert.com.
Yes. And Hollywood Reporter compared it to Kevin Can Wait. They were less enthusiastic. According to Variety, this is what you were talking about, Tim Allen's Shifting Gears is now ABC's most streamed series premiere ever. It displaced The Conners, also benefited from a big night of Abbott Elementary, mixing with It's Always Sunny. That was their dual combination episode. And it's funny because Sean William Scott's character, even though it was in such a short arc in It's Always Sunny, is still talked about. Like, I think people will know about that regardless of whether or not this show exists.
Just that one episode.
Yeah. And there happens to be a Shifting Gears movie that came out in 2024, but I didn't see anybody confusing it with this Hallmark movie. After Female Mechanic, so still in the
car business, yeah,
just reluctantly agrees to participate in a car restorations show. She is shocked to learn about that her ex-boyfriend Luke is her main competitor. Will Sparks ignite? Well, unless you have anything else you want to point out.
No.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.